All Quiet on the Western Front is a Netflix World War I movie based on a book about the experience of German soldiers in the trenches. It also follows various German leaders' efforts to sign a peace treaty with the French. As far as I know, this is the third film adaptation of this book, and I have not seen the other two film versions. It is directed by Edward Berger and stars Felix Kammerer and several other German actors whose names I will not butcher here. I didn't recognize any of the actors except for Daniel Bruhl, who plays Zemo in Captain America Civil War. I thought this movie was pretty good overall. For me, I put war movies into two broad categories. There are the war movies that focus primarily on acts of courage and bravery that are meant to inspire hope in the viewer. I put films like Saving Private Ryan and 1917 into this category. Even though those movies can be pretty grim, I think overall the audience leaves with positive feelings. The other type of war movie focuses less on the heroism and instead emphasizes the brutality, fear, and horror of war. Basically, every Vietnam War movie ever made, except for Operation Dumbo Drop, fit into this category. All Quiet on the Western Front is one of those war movies that just wants you to know how violent, depressing, painful, and hypocritical war can be. There are no heroes here. I didn't feel sadness watching this movie. I just felt gross, which isn't a bad thing. Honestly, what stood out the most to me about this movie was the soundtrack. It is very different from what we hear in other war movies. For the most part, it just repeats three notes that sound like bwah, 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 over and over again, and it almost sounds like a synthesizer. It reminds me of a villain theme song from like a Transformers movie or some other sci-fi space film. Instead of going for the sad music like the they went for scary and ominous, which I really liked. By the way, if you watch this in German with English subtitles, they will remind you repeatedly that ominous music is playing. The movie looks beautiful. We get a lot of dazzling, establishing shots of the French and German landscape on the edge of winter, and there is a lot of symbolism here. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to pick up on the symbolism and its meaning, but it was still pretty cool. The opening scene and the ending were just a great critique of the never-ending cycle of state-sponsored violence. I'm not going to spoil the scenes, I'm just going to say it never occurred to me that militaries in dire straits would use their resources in such a manner. I saw a review by a YouTube historian who criticized the accuracy of the battle scenes. He pointed out that soldiers very rarely just charged head-on straight into machine gun fire. He pointed out that the placement of the barbed wire didn't make any sense and stuff like that. I don't know anything about that, so I can't comment. All I know is the battle scenes felt like a horror movie and were very effective for me. I do have some criticisms. Even though I thought the musical score was striking, hearing those three notes for 2 hours got kind of old. That was probably intentional, but it still lost its impact. I also didn't like the CGI gore. I wish war movies would stop doing that. I have yet to see a war film that uses convincing computer-generated gore. Please, let's go back to using practical effects in our war films. If you want to show someone's head blow up, get a dummy with red jello in its head and blow it up. If you want to run someone over with a tank, get a dummy with animatronic components and run it over. If you want to light someone on fire, get a fire-resistant suit, cover them in that fire-resistant gel stuff, and light the man on fire. Don't color him black in post and then add computerized flames. It looks silly. I also didn't like the dialogue very much. It didn't do anything to make me sympathetic to the characters. I didn't feel sad seeing members of our main cast dying. Oh, spoiler alert, not everyone makes it out alive. I think that's what I didn't like most about this movie. In a movie like Platoon, even though the characters were really rough around the edges and some of them did horrific things, I still wanted them to make it out alive, and I felt pity for the ones who didn't make it out. In this movie, I had no connection with the main cast, and no, it's not because they're German. Get that thought out of your head. When they died, there was no pity, it just felt gross and uncomfortable. I think this is because the script didn't do much to flesh out the characters' motivations or personalities, with one or two exceptions. Overall, I thought it was effective at portraying war in all of its horror. It's not in my top 5 best war films of all time, and not the best movie of the year, but still a disturbing yet beautiful piece of art.